Welcome to Conversations with. On this show, my guests and I explore the bumps and triumphs of their journey to extract the gems from their experiences, because success leaves clues, and today we turn those clues into billboards for you. I'm your host, Gene Bernier, founder of Peeled Back, speaker and coactive coach, guiding leaders to pursue a life worth living. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 119 of Conversations with. Today we are speaking with Crystal Henrickson, a certified leadership coach and a principal at Talent Collective. Crystal blends her curiosity about human behavior and interpersonal dynamics into helping organizations build healthy, fair, inclusive workplaces through coaching leaders to develop an authentic relationship with themselves and those they lead. She has a strong affinity for vocations and hobbies that begin with C: communication, coaching, crafting, canning, cooking, and recently ceramics. I'm very excited to be having this conversation with you today, Crystal. Thank you so much for being on the show. And those amount of words cannot do you justice.
What? I wrote those words, and that's the first time I've heard them spoken out loud. So thank you for speaking my words
You're very
into this
welcome.
space and for having me here. I appreciate it so
Well,
much.
well, I appreciate that you're here and to share those words. It's always interesting when you hear your own bio after you've written it and somebody else reads it. You're like, oh, that is me. Cool. All right.
That is me. Yeah, I'm like, yes, yes, check, check, yes, yes. I feel this way about myself. Yes.
It's all approved and it's all here. So, again, thank you for being here and having a conversation about coaching, leadership, and all the things that you have experienced through that journey of becoming that leader and coach yourself.
Thanks for having me. And before we dig into it, I gotta say, because as I was backstage watching your awesome intro that was happening, I'm like, Gene, you gotta get a new headshot. You've got hair now. All these, right? You were bald for a bit there.
Yeah.
Like,
It's funny you say that because I was watching it this time, and I usually don't. I just kind of like dance and get ready for it. I'm like, I really do need to go schedule a new headshot.
it's probably on my mind too, because I was looking at my headshot on there. And while those are recent, I just got a haircut myself. So, it's always evolving how we look and how we show up. So it's interesting because you said you wanted to talk about like uh leadership journey and coaching journey and the evolution of it. So maybe that's a metaphor for it or something.
Well, maybe it's a place to step into. Is like, can we talk a little bit about that evolution in your own life throughout where you were to what you are now doing with Talent Creative?
Collective, but yes, it
Collective,
is
sorry.
creative, isn't it?
I
Yes,
don't know why
another
I
C
said
word.
collective.
It's okay. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Creative's a word that I remember actually long before I was a coach or was even thinking about coaching. A friend of mine was going through um, coactive CTI coaching. And as you well know, when you're a student in it, you have to get your coaching hours going, and you usually start with friends and willing participants who are willing to be coached so you could practice. And I was one of those willing participants for a friend. And one of the things that she said, she just like one of those blunt statements, like, you are creative. And I was
Mm.
like, I'm not an artist. No, that's not me. But as you called it talent creative, I'm like, yeah, I will own that word.
There's
Creative is something that I feel like has always been true, even if I was reluctant to say it about myself at different times
Ooh.
in my career.
Well, let's explore that. It sometimes can be really hard to hear, oh, you're creative. Be like, and associate that just with like the arts, but like creativity is mixed into everything that we do. How's that been for you to start to like let that compliment and that statement about you being creative land and explore what that actually means for you?
Yeah, I think yeah, it definitely sits a lot better with me over the last I'm going to say since I made a big move. So 2018, personally made a big move. I was already a coach, mostly virtual, like a coactive coach at that time. I'm a professional certified coach as well. I'm a trauma informed coach now too. And coactive's part of it. But my partner and I, we made a big move. We moved from small apartment in the city to the Okanagan on like what feels like a large piece of land to us. Although if you look around where we live, we have a small piece of land compared to everybody else. But something really opened up when nature was more of something that was all around me instead of something I had to go to. So, kind of when I left the urban, it's like all the things that I was bottling up creatively into one little tiny apartment, one little bedroom in that apartment, it kind of exploded. So, even me adding that like ceramics is my new craft or what have you, and that's a creative pursuit, is something I probably wouldn't have said before. But I think it's always been something. If I look all the way back, I loved taking creative writing as a child, and a teenager. I was into theater. Um, I was told I was no good as like a singer or an artist or anything that was like visual medium.
Right.
And I believe that was just some judgy folks in my world that I took to heart. But now I can see like, no, creative is everywhere. The words that I use, the way I try to draw out patterns from folks that I'm talking to, especially with my coaching clients, the way that I don't know, approach life outside of it. Like, how can we creatively solve this problem? What's a out of the box way of thinking about something? Even creative as artist has started to be something that I embrace about myself. I don't know if you
That's
want to dig in there into something
yeah.
particular that
Well,
I said, but go for it.
well, the thing that I hear about with this creativity is it's kind of like it was a great metaphor of going from the city where you're all closed in to being out in the Okanagan where you kind of like got more area to roam. It's like you created a different container, and within that, new things were able to grow, and different perspectives were able to come from that. And I think
Absolutely.
that's really interesting as a place of like holding space in the at how sorry holding the space of creativity in some of the leadership development and coaching that you do is like there's almost like a permission to go play within the creativity.
That's so true. Yeah, even when you said the Okanagan, I replaced it with the Okanagan in my mind. Yeah, there's like a place to play. Um, yeah, it's interesting. You think about well, just coaching in general, professional coaching in general, but then
Right.
applying it to leadership. And what I find is um, a lot of clients, when they first arrive in coaching, they don't arrive because they know exactly where they want to go, or what their vision is for themselves. I find a lot of folks arrive knowing they want to do a something, but feeling something that's holding them back in some way, and it
Right.
almost feels there's almost like a stifling sort of feeling, like something isn't emerging that
Okay.
could emerge. And so when you
Yeah.
say playful, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like, what's that thing that, or things that feel like they are getting us locked or stuck, and playing with it to help free it or help open it up some for somebody. And sometimes we can't do that on our own. So yeah, sometimes it does feel like coaching's a very playful place, even if the topic is quite serious.
Well, the thing that brought the, the thing that takes that to the next step here, as I hear, playfulness is like an invitation, but there's also like an acceptance of, you might not, you said people come to you because they know they want to do something and there's some resistance, and both those might be question marks when they first get started. But maybe by stepping into this playful creativity side, it's almost like a permission to like acknowledge the question mark and explore it a little bit more without so much. On what I hear it in the way that you're bringing it off, I hear it from a less restrictive, less sharp. It's like the walls are being kicked open to go play in there.
Yeah, even as I think about, the remnants that come with us. I don't know if this happens to you, but for me, remnants of the coaching conversations past sort of filter in. So one conversation sort of like filtering in through my mind was someone I was recently talking to, and this comes up. This is an echo of lots of different conversations. They'll say something like, so you're gonna help me, think about this without emotion attached. Like, oh no, no, no. We're gonna think about it fully present of all of those emotions that are there. That might be hard
Yeah.
for somebody who really wants to resist emotions to hear. But to get the full expression out, we got to look at the thinking and the feeling,
Yeah.
the coactive, we like to say, the doing and the being part.
Yeah.
And if we do that and we do it in a way that is, now I say like that's trauma informed and also can be light and playful, we might see things together that are way more expansive than we could have ever seen if we only played within the box of like logic.
Right.
So, yeah, how can you bring all those elements in and do something really colorful if we're going to keep going with this
Yeah,
artistic creative
we seem to be
analogy?
finding a lot of ways to bring c words into the conversation. Creative, colorful, um, and there's something about like greeting the logic with both the fullness of everything else that's coming into that playfulness and that creativity is like it's welcome too, and it's an opportunity to bring it all. Like what I really enjoyed hearing that is when clients do come into that space going, "Ah, I want to detach," be like, no, you want to actually get a healthy attachment with all of that so you can be informed and so that you can make a full decision. Because without it, you're kind of cutting some opportunities down to have choice.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like, there's a bit of education that happens when we're working with somebody new who's new to coaching in general or new to these styles of coaching where coaching is more about bringing out the brilliance in that person that we're coaching instead of bringing out our own expertise.
Right.
Um, but there is something really magic that happens when somebody realizes something that's deeply important to them, like a value perhaps that they hadn't noticed, and then they use that to color the decisions that they're making. Like somebody, I think about someone whose value might even be playful, and them being able to say, or us being able as coaches to be like, okay, so like what would playful look like in this kind of situation where it doesn't
Yeah.
seem like there's any kind of playful? What might it be? And
Right.
just their ability to explore it is something that feels so honoring of how they want to be and show up. And yeah, I love it. Makes every coaching conversation a really rich one to me.
Well, and it's an opportunity for them to do that without you having to drag them through it. It's like that invitation. Be like, what can happen when you go play? And I found I don't well maybe it's the same for you. It's like once they start that path, it's just like, oh well, what else could we look at? What else could we look at? How else can we look at this? It's like it's just finding that value that really resonates or lights them up. Is like when you see their eyes kind of go like, oh, here we are. This is the thing. Now it gets to unpack and unravel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So taking creativity, coloring the ways, and then bringing that into more of a team and organizational standpoint is like what what is that like as you're taking these concepts and then applying them in a team environment.
Mm. So then it's like almost like, I don't know, the crayon box or something just got a little bit bigger. There's more colors in it or something like that. And maybe there's some duplications of some of the colors. I think, what do I think about that? I think what is really special about taking coaching into group or team environments is we never know. We truly altogether never know what's going to happen. We might have a shared vision, we might have a shared agenda, but we don't know how we're going to get there. And so
Right.
the variables become bigger or more variable, and we get the opportunity to not just me as the coach, but each person in that group gets the opportunity to really, if they're paying attention, to really pay attention to kind of what's happening with each person. And if that's not fully seen, I believe it's the job of the coach to notice that and bring it forward when it's
Right.
appropriate. So often in my group coaching, I feel like sometimes I feel a little bit more like a fly on the wall. I'm still an active fly
Yeah.
on the wall, but I'm watching what's being created and then maybe zooming in a little bit to like pull out some of the crayons or something and letting them really shine in whatever it is that they're creating and then highlighting what they're creating that's so cool or what, we can sub in the right words for creating,
Yeah.
like what they're learning, what they're understanding, what they're actioning on.
Right. And to accomplish all that, there's like, as I'm listening, the word trust kept like shooting up here. It's like there's a component of creating that place for trust to happen for those who might not feel so inclined to bring out their creativity in that group setting, is like building that around and starting to like layer it up and trying to find a place to meet everybody where they're at and moving forward from there.
Yeah, you're so right. And yeah, it's sort of like the, how we help a group cultivate trust, especially when trust either hasn't been established because it's a newer work group, or maybe things have happened that have made it feel like it can't be a trusting space. And
Hmm.
how do I like your words, like building it up. So trust doesn't just happen. Trust takes time. And if you're so right, like if there's not a level of trust and safety, it's going to be really hard for people to be courageous, which is going to make it hard for them to be creative.
Right.
So sometimes it's not playful right from the get-go or lighthearted right from the get-go. Sometimes it's really, you know, can sometimes feel a little bit slow and deliberate to try to help people sort of meet each other where they happen to be.
Right. I think that word deliberate is so important there in that context, is like, yes, it may feel slow, but it's on purpose with a direction for a reason. There's a deliberateness to it. And there's a quote that I use to myself on the regular basis is slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Oh, I
And
like
like
that.
finding that place to allow the slowness to come in for the smoothness as a team, as a process, whatever it is, however you're viewing that, is to like to bring that into that space. And sometimes that's layering up and building on to a point to kind of build the foundation for that team to be able to really start to shine.
Yeah, there's something too about even just what you said, such a gift, like the slowness part. Um, there's a part of me that is the part I always need to self-manage. It gets easier and easier over time, but the part that wants to get to the results, really, really been, I don't know, like uh, indoctrinated or something with this need to get to the whatever the thing the outcome
Yeah.
is. Um, and then the gift of when you go slow and slow is smooth, the outcome happens much more quickly than it is if we try to skip over all of those parts. So sometimes, in I get comments in especially in my group coaching sessions about the discomfort that folks might feel about the
Mm.
quietness when nothing's being said and there's a pause and everyone's like, fill the pause. I'm like, don't fill the pause. Just like white space in a piece of art or something like that. Like, just let it be for a sec. What might
and
come?
well, yeah, exactly. It's like what's possible in that pause? What if like stepping into and creating that pause is just the breath that somebody else needs to go, oh, here's my opportunity, or creating the pause going, why don't I want, why does the silence make me uncomfortable? It's like those are all things that then can start to be brought up as well. Like the pause is incredibly powerful
True. Yeah.
as we experience it
I know. I'm like, just sit in the pause, Gene. Let's feel
here.
it.
Well, from the place of the pause, building trust, creating our creativity, talk a little bit more about what you bring with your style of like now creating into that layers of a fair workplace, inclusive, and we use the words authentic relationships. I feel like that last one kind of comes from that place of the team building up trust around each other. But authentic, I think, sometimes can be misconstrued about what that truly means. So, what's your definition of what an authentic relationship is, and how does the rest of the team acknowledge it when it starts to appear?
Mm, yeah. All these words, hey, like ones that have been, I don't know, consumed or something, or like feels like they have a mass produced sort of energy to them, or they can take on a mass produced sort of
Yes,
energy. And authentic feels like one of those, unfortunately, because it's such a good word.
it is a great
Um,
word.
so I think, firstly, I think you can't have an authentic relationship with others if you don't have one with yourself.
Mm,
So if a leader or a group of leaders isn't working individually on what authenticity means to them. They might change the word, which is fine. I like to think about the word genuine
mm,
too.
yeah,
So like if they're not doing that with themselves and honoring everything, even those questions you gave in the pause, like how come I'm uncomfortable in the pause? Like what might I want to say? What don't I want to say in the pause? If there's not that relationship being cultivated internally, it's going to be real hard to show up externally
yeah,
authentically. So I think there's something there that each leader needs to really pay attention to, and all the parts. I think this is the other part. It's like some will say, "Oh, authentic means you can just show up with like all your negatives or like, I'm just direct and like a bull in the china shop or whatever the cliche is. I get
yeah.
to just show up like this." And I was like, "Well, maybe yes, and if that's not how you want to show up, you're doing that from a reactive place or a fear based place, perhaps, and you haven't really worked to unpack that, then it's not really maybe your best genuine self
Ooh,
that's showing up,
yes.
right? And so, like, part of coaching is like how to help you show up the best way that you want to show up, not that somebody else wants you to show up. It's not
Yeah.
my way, it's what their way is. And I'm yet to hear somebody from like their best place, like the vision that they have for themselves, saying that they want to show up that way. They say they want to show up wholly, which could also be acknowledging that today I feel like a bull in the china shop and I wish to knock things over because I'm having a bad day. Totally fair. You can bring that. But the way you bring it, it's like you like recognize that you're feeling it. And so you say the feelings, but you don't like act out the
Yeah, there's like
feelings and impact others.
the other piece of comes up here is like there's like a self authority that you take and like deep ownership when you can recognize like oof, I'm seeing this coming up for me. This feeling in my body is usually ends up being expressed as this bull in the china shop. How do I want to be today with this? And is it an appropriate time for that? Because sometimes there may be an appropriate time while the bowl is being managed properly to use that energy, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but if it's used in the wrong way and in a context and a results that impact the team and the people around you negatively, then it is. But it can also be used in the right way. So how do you then start to take authority of yourself to go, I'm feeling this today, and maybe it's not the right thing, and
Yeah.
maybe it's an opportunity to own all of that.
It's so interesting as you said, impacting others negatively. And I get so curious about that, I guess. Uh, I think it's okay. I think I know what you mean, but I'm just going to express all
All right.
this anyway.
Yes.
It's like we're allowed to have negative emotions in the group. Of course, our negative emotions are going to impact the group, but the presence of negative emotions won't harm the group, even if it's negative. So,
Yeah.
like, we can say, I'm having a bull in the china shop moment. We could say it, we could express it, and we might receive compassion and empathy from others, even if we're experiencing something not great for us, which to me is different than like harmful negativity. Like the negativity is, I don't know, like unchecked or unowned,
Yeah.
like you were saying, and then it hurts others, which feels different than like allowing others may feel impacted, or they might have a similar felt experience or feel for us. That's more empathy being felt in a group. And a group that works well together and is inclusive would be inclusive of all of those emotional states, we wouldn't shun them or shame them or
Yes.
dismiss them. Um, and because we'd be able to hold space for them if everybody is owning their own selves and how they bring these things up into the group.
I I absolutely love that you went there with that. It's like the wholeness of the group is not predicated on did we only have positive or negative experiences. Is like how do we handle all of that? It's like there's a combination of continuing to build like CTI wording is like designed alliance, but like how do you create that container as a team and those agreements as a team to like make space for all of that because it's all going to show up because it's just part of the human experience and being able to do that without a place of shame and being ensuring that everyone will find a way to take the ownership of what has occurred within them and how that's brought out. I find those are the teams when you can sit around and have healthy conflict and make it about the conflict and not about the people. It's like great things can occur and will occur.
Yeah. Yeah. And even, there's, again, you're speaking, like you said, design and alliance. So I'm like, yes, this is like trust and safety. So like if it's almost like can you see it? I don't know. It's like an aura or something like that. Like a team that has real trust and safety, they feel safe bringing these things up. They know that whatever they bring up will be, it's like held in esteem or something like that. And even if it's negative or it's got conflict or there's a confrontation that needs to happen, the the group has like a held feeling of this is trust,
Yeah.
right? Versus, I think about the I don't know, it's like you can't feel it, but it's said like we have trust. I don't know. There's like a different experience in what holding space for like real trust and safety is compared to just spoken words.
One, I think like on all those extremes, like when things are great and when things are challenging, is like that is going to be when those words mean more than just a sticker or a poster that's on the walls. Like then the teams showing up is like, how are we applying this, and how are we working through what this trust means? What does this mean to hold space for all of that? And you're right, like those groups that are able to operate like that, they vibrate different. Like you just know that they've got each other's back when it comes to this work and being in this team, and they also outperform. Like any team that I've ever been on that has gotten to that level outperforms everything that we have.
Yeah. It's like I mean, that's the, I continue to like to use the word healthy. It's like you can
Yeah,
see that there's health when they are performing well, even in challenging times. They might not hit their outcome goals or something like a downturn is a
yeah,
downturn is a downturn. However, how they feel going through that, they feel safe and connected and like they can be their whole selves.
yeah. Oh, 100%. And like those downturns are an excellent opportunity. Yes, they suck regardless of the structure of the team. They're always difficult. But it's like, did they band together? Did they turn towards one another or turn away from one another? Like that's to me is like always a critical component of any relationship. Is like, uh, are you both at a point that somebody is going to have to choose to turn towards to take that first step? And that's
Yeah.
kind of like that role of the leader here as well as like your job is to take the first step for your team to show them we can do this.
Yeah, there's like how much you have to model and take the first step so that others feel like it's actually, to me, it's like it's not always the leader that needs to do it, but leader needs to have modeled it enough or made it
Yeah,
safe and model safety that others can do it too. But yeah, it's like how supported or how like, yeah, how, I don't know what the right word is. I'll just keep using supported. How supported does any of the member on the
right.
teams feel to take whatever step is needed to take?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in that role, like as well, like leadership comes in all shapes and sizes and with all titles too, right? Like to if anybody's listening to us today, you could be a leader even if you don't have the manager title or the fancy titles. Like step up,
Yeah.
step into that place if that's important for you. It's like you're going to learn, you're going to grow, and it's going to resonate with people around you.
Yeah, to me, everyone's a leader. It might make it a little bit unclear when someone's like, Crystal, what kinds of clients do you want to be working with or do you already work with? I'm like, well, technically everyone's a leader because they're 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 leader within, they're like
Yeah.
leading themselves. And then yes, some people will lead things. Some people will lead other people, some people
Yeah.
will lead both. But yeah, it's like how are you carrying yourself
Hmm.
in this world?
What does that look like? That carrying yourself is like, what are some of the things people can look for as a way to go, oh, I recognize that in myself, to recognize their own leadership capabilities?
Hmm, that's a good one. Okay, well, the whole authenticity thing would be, numero uno or something like that. Um, being able to self-reflect, being able to notice not just thinking, but also feelings, being able
Mm,
to manage those two things in healthy ways. Those to me would all be characteristics of a good, solid leader. That's also characteristic of like a good, solid human, maybe. I don't know, like being
it
able to
t-
learn that and learn
yeah,
it better,
ties
right?
back into everybody's a leader statement.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I would say communication
Mm,
tends to be the leader's feels like their main tool. I don't know if there's other
yes.
tools, but the one that to me is like communication is a main tool and how they use it and how they use it not at, but with
Well,
whoever it is in their world, ecosystem, whatever.
that's a
Um,
huge definition even there, is like how positioning that communication with the person instead of at the person or at
yeah,
people, period, right? Like, how are you putting yourself out there and realizing as well that communication is far more than the words we use. It's our tonality, it's our body language, it's the full expression. And learning how to connect all three of those states of communicating or communication is critical for getting your message across.
yeah.
And being a leader, actually, the my guest from episode 118, we talked a lot about how communication was that skill that he didn't realize in his younger areas of his career was like the gateway to a whole bunch of more opportunities.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's this, I think about it like there's the different kinds of levels. And I think about some of the work that my business partner and I do in not coaching and consulting. So in consulting work, where it's about, thinking about levels in somebody's career and, how we evolve as we move through our career, which happens to coincide with us moving through our lives.
Yeah.
And thinking about like, I don't try really hard not to feel ashamed of how I communicated when I was younger and even like first managerial roles that I had because it's like I didn't know. I didn't know that it wasn't just what I was saying. It was also the tone, what you said, the tone,
Yeah.
the body language. And now I'll also add how somebody else, it's like the attunement to
Hmm.
whoever else we're communicating with, the relationality that happens. I didn't know those things.
Yeah.
Those I didn't grow up in a house that taught those things. I don't know if that happened in a lot of houses. So like those weren't things I learned until later. So there's almost like that evolution that happened. So I don't no shame to your former guest who in his younger years didn't know that. It's like the leadership is like the
Yeah.
evolution. Like, will you keep learning and growing yourself to be a better and better version of yourself?
And as we're talking about communication, like an aha has just happened here, is like when we talk about how we're reflecting inside, that's also communicating to self, and everything that you just said about how's it being received, how's it the attunement within self, and learning to talk to yourself. Like, most of us have little voices in our heads in healthy ways, and but we also have a lot of expression that happens below the neck, and learning to communicate with all of that and going, what is happening is such an important communication skill that then I think also starts to amplify when you start communicating outwardly as well. It's like as you get refined internally, again, it's going to be amplified externally.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So yeah, the better attunement to when things are going well, and then also when things are going not so well. That's like important. And you said the little voices in us. I'm like, yes, we're allowed to talk about this. There's no shame
Yeah.
to know that we all have self-talk happening on the like, up here in our executive brain and then also in here in our
Hmm.
emotional brains. We're, yes, how we talk to ourselves, and are we even conscious of how we're doing that? And are we shifting it over time as we learn what would be the best way for us as individuals?
Right.
Yeah,
And it's just like speaks back to that evolution of, and it's kind of giving your past self some credit for going, you did the best that you could with the information you had. I have different information, and I'm doing our best is now moved up to here. Thanks
that's
for
right.
helping me get to here. I appreciate that. And we've had some stumbles along the way, which were incredible learning opportunities.
Yeah, like I've never, if I think about communication, I called it like the leadership skill or like their main tool, I think I said. And like
Yeah.
if I thought about it like I don't know, maybe like a sports player or something like that, like do you know any sports players who are at the top of their game, let's say in their, I don't know, they're in the Olympics, they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever age. Do you hear any of them going, I'm so ashamed of my 10-year-old self who like really screwed up in T-ball or whatever that they happen to be doing. I didn't win the championship. So you had to grow, and your literal body had to grow to be able to hit those times. And
Yes.
like it just could we could we think about our brain and our heart and like our gut like that, like they're growing?
Oh, I like that too, right? Like it's like deploy some kindness and compassion to yourself, and you're right. Like, what does the professionals or whatever role that you're in that you're like, man, this is what the top of this looks like? Are they going, oh man, remember when I was 10 or when I was 15 or even 20 when I did all that? Probably not. And they're going to that place of going, I can still move and learn. Look how far I've come since then, right? Like there's a component of like, look how far you've come since then. You can celebrate that. You can learn from that. You can debrief from that and start all that reflection. Like if today's the first day that you go, huh, I have come a long way, and you can start to celebrate a little bit of that, high five to you. You've started the path of improving that communication because it is a two-way street.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I think that's for anybody that's listening that might have that negative self-talk, maybe they did feel ashamed that they didn't hit it out of the park when they were a kid or a teenager or a young adult, and that voice is still there. It's like that voice is like a stuck part of us, and we all have them. I feel like we're going to go to our last breath with still having some kind of part that is stuck in some way. Um, and that is the learning experience too. But like
Yeah.
if we can notice it that there's a stuckness or like a negative self-talk or something like that, then that's we're at that first step to start to get to the place where we might be able to celebrate how far we've come or what that younger version of ourselves must have been going through and what they maybe needed to hear but didn't at
Yeah.
that time. All those things become possibilities.
Mm. And I'll take it for myself is like I frequently go back and have conversations with my younger self to find where those stuck parts are, be it as a teenager or young adult. Is like what are we bringing forward that we actually need to like integrate and like accept and acknowledge here so that we can actually go shine. I need you to shine. Like that's where I go for playfulness is like the younger self is like I need you to bring out like the crayons, the Legos in my life. Let's make this
Yes.
happen. And if you're stuck, we're missing out on some fullness here.
I will openly share that I do those same things. Like,
Yeah.
where are those younger versions of me that, deserve to have some compassion, kindness? They deserve to have like, I don't know, the parent that we couldn't have had because, everyone's doing the best that they can, but
Yeah.
like also we might have needed to hear something else that only our adult self could give
Yeah.
that version of us. I heard something I thought it was lovely on the weekend. I heard something or read something that said, you know, give your give that version of yourself before that version of yourself came into something that hurt them, that brought on the negative self-talk. What was that version of you doing that was, what you said, like playful? What was that version of you? How are they living? And I read that, and in my intro, you said that I'm most newly in ceramics. I'm like, yes, I I had a great time as like a 10-year-old child in this pottery class, and I hold on to that memory of being a kid in that pottery class so hard. It was like the coolest thing that that 10-year-old version of me did, and I needed her. And
Yes.
she went through some stuff, right, afterwards. And so being able to reconnect with her every time I go into the pottery studio, it's a brilliant gift that I'm giving that version of myself in all of the ages from 10 years old onward. So
Yes.
I'm never leaving that pottery studio.
Well, yeah, and it's like we all, like you say, we all have those things that I love that. It's like, what were they doing before like this message started to show up? Go hunt in the past, find the things that do bring you joy, and pull those things forward, and you're going to see how they kind of spread all over other areas of your life.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you know how I said at the start of the show we were going to blow past the 40 minutes because we were having a wonderful conversation,
Did we
and
just do that?
we kept our promise.
Yay, us!
So now this is an opportunity to give a little shout out about what you do. What do you do with Talent Collective, and who would be great to connect with you?
Oh, okay. Well, Talent Collective, I co-founded in 2015, and we are a very bespoke, I love that word, bespoke. We're a bespoke consultancy and coaching firm. And one half of our business, I think I said a little bit about it, does people operations consulting and more specifically, career development and compensation strategy work. So if you're a company who's going through high growth moments or who hasn't done their compensation and career development strategies and could use some capacity building support in the form of consulting and advising, get in touch. That's one half.
Yeah.
And the other half is the leadership coaching part, which is predominantly my domain. My business partners predominantly on the consulting side. And if you're a leader or an emerging leader, especially if you are maybe a woman, maybe a person of color, somebody who maybe doesn't feel represented in your workplace, I'd highly recommend for you to reach out too, especially if you're going through something where you could use a thought-provoking partnership that brings out the brilliance in you. Reach out. And even if it's not me that's the right coach for you at this moment, I'd want to connect you to other coaches who might be the right fit for you in this moment. So reach out and let's talk because I like talking.
That's awesome. And as well, all that contact information is down below in the show notes. So make sure to connect with Crystal on LinkedIn or through their site. Crystal, thank you so much for being on the show. Before we let you go, I ask all my guests a final question. So, the question is, we're going to jump into my time machine. We're going to go ahead into the future by 10 years. When we open the door, what does that future you say thank you to you for?
Ooh, I like that. Um, okay, future me says thank you for taking the time that we just talked about, like how to really pay attention to what's going on inside. Thank you for doing that all through your 30s so that you could go through your 40s with like this new evolved way of showing up in the world. And uh, our 50s are great because we have that as the new foundation. So, also thank you for using that skincare product that you've been using recently because, yeah, we like it.
I love all of that. Thank you so much for answering that and playing here today and just seeing where all this goes. I appreciate the conversation so much.
Aw, I appreciate you so much and for giving this space This is your episode 119. So thank you for giving each of us an opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you and share your platform with you.
Oh,
I
thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much. I appreciate that too. All right. And everybody else, this has been episode 19 of Conversations with. We'll be back next Wednesday with another guest. Until then, have a great one, and we will talk to you soon. Keep the creativity flowing in your lives. Oh, one last thing. It's the legal language. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professionals.